opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
There it is, the music of Momuments Men. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. I'm John Comerford. I'm joined in the studio by Demetri, Panos.
Hello.
And helming the booth, Marissa Serafini will be chiming in from time to time. Thank you, Marissa.
Hello.
Okay, so as I mentioned, it's George Clooney's latest directorial effort, The Momuments Men. And go ahead, Demetri. Why don't you start off by just your overall impression of the movie?
You know, I enjoyed this movie. I had a good time. You know, certainly much better than a lot of the critics out there. You know, and maybe because of them, I went in with some low expectations. But at the end, I was like, you know, that was relatively entertaining. You know, I may not be rushing out to buy it when it comes out on Blu-ray, and by the end of the year, I may have forgotten a lot about it. But I will say that I was educated on what this Momuments Men Brigade did. Yeah. And I appreciated that. I appreciated the performances. And I actually appreciated George Clooney's nostalgia towards the mission war film. We talked about Lone Survivor, and we talked about war movies and being gritty. This was not that kind of movie. No. And they used to make mission films, Guns of Navarone, The Dirty Dozen, things like that, and you know, even Bridge over River Kwai. You got to build. This was a throwback to that, and I appreciated that. I liked, you know, it was a different kind of thing, and I actually, you know, in researching it, I learned some things from it too. I
have to say, this is unusual for us, but I felt the exact same way.
Wow.
I was so surprised, you know, because there's such mixed reviews. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. I don't care. I want to see it anyway because for whatever reason, I just wanted to see it, and we were going to be doing this, so. And I was pleasantly surprised. I understand everybody's criticisms of it, and that's fine. But I was entertained. There were moments in it I thought were really good. Yep. And I'm so impressed with the fact that they brought this to a film because I was not aware of any of this. I love the fact that they brought this and made it a film because now I've since have gone on to read a whole bunch about it. Yeah. And I'm going, thank God they brought this to light because this, you know, it's at World War II, and it's all that generation is not with us for the most part anymore. Yeah. I mean, there obviously there's some who are still around. Right. I don't mean to demean that in any way, but I'm glad this story came to light while they're still here.
Yeah, me too. And again, we're so primed now, like, you know, by the types of war movies that we're used to seeing today, that to see another side of it again, like I had no idea. Yeah, and to me that was fascinating.
Yeah, and I liked that it was a different kind of war movie. It wasn't even if it was World War II, so it's going to be a different kind anyway than we're used to in any kind of contemporary reference. But it was even different for a World War II movie. It had references towards those kinds of movies yesteryear, which I thought were great too. And I thought he really enjoyed those. And it looked to me, he was paying homage to that, not only to the real people, but the way they made movies for that era.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And that's what I loved about
I thought it was
watching this movie, because there hasn't been a movie made like this since what, the 60s?
And I think that's what a lot of 70s? People I think they're pissed off.
Yeah.
I think some people, not all. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people did like it, but you know, there are a lot it's getting mixed reviews. There's no secret. But I think people had weird expectations going in, and I think, is that all a marketing aspect of it? You know, I'm not really aware of the marketing campaign for it. It hasn't been in the forefront of my realm so far right now. Well,
I think it's great. You brought up expectations, and this is a movie. Well, number one, we talk about the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. It's at a 34%. Yeah. Look, the movie was originally supposed to come out around Christmas time, so it was going to be released in December. And I remember seeing the trailers for it in the marketing campaign.
It started the trailers in August.
Yeah, and it looked like a good movie. Yeah. It looked like it could even potentially have some Academy consideration somewhere.
How
especially
could you not look at the cast, look at the story? I mean, it's like, wow, this looks like a big deal.
And, you know, it's not a movie that you would expect to get 34% on Rotten Tomatoes.
No. And by the way, I don't think it's deserving of that 34%.
I agree. I think I don't understand why people like wanted to take the butcher knife, because I think everything that was done, again, I wasn't there. I wasn't at Sony. I don't know how the decision was made. But listen, if this movie were released in December, it would have really gotten eviscerated gross-wise. It would have, like, the reviews would have killed it so much that it wouldn't have had its $22 million opening weekend, because there was so much out there already. And we had like legitimate Oscar contenders that people were going to. Then you had other big movies that were still out in the marketplace. You know, that December 25th, there were like 7 movies coming out. So if this movie were to have come out in that time, those reviews would have killed it. And, you know, by mid-January, it probably would have been gone. So it's almost as if they watched the movie, they had seen it, they sort of kind of knew that this isn't going to be a prestige film. And, you know, why don't we push the release date back, which is usually not a good sign. But then I think George Clooney did something that's rare. He took the hit for it. He was the person, like, it wasn't the studio. It wasn't, oh, Sony must have a clunker. It was Clooney who went out and said, no, watch the movie. It's not done. And I don't want to be rushed. I want to try to put the best.
No, that's great. To his credit. Absolutely.
To his credit, I think that's great. So they put it in like February, which isn't the best time to release a movie. But you know, it gave something for the adults to go to. And unfortunately, it still got eviscerated by press, but the expectations change too.
Exactly. But I'm also thinking that the pre-press or pre-release and all that buzz before it actually got released, I think it hurt it tremendously. With it, kind of like some movies get overhyped and you realize they're nowhere near as good as the hype. I think this is better than what's the bad negative press.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like, wow, what? And it's interesting how the marketing or the press or the buzz about it has affected it.
Yeah, and if you notice too, once they pushed the release date back, their marketing changed too.
I actually don't, but
like, their marketing changed somewhere where they tried to make it more comedic. They were trying to make it not as...
They were changing the tone?
Yeah, just change the tone, make it, you know, get it accessible, try to make it more mainstream. Really focus on the cast a lot, you know, as to, you know, who you have in it. And it's a great cast.
Yeah, because that was a lot of the criticism was that tonally it changes, doesn't know what it is or what it wants to be. I didn't have a problem with the tone. I understand that people had criticisms of it, and that's fine. That, you know, I'm not going to debate that because, okay, it didn't work for them. But I understood that, okay, it was lighthearted in its comedy. It wasn't, I don't think he was trying to be a comedy per se, and it was dealing with a very serious subject matter in the sense that, you know, it's war and people are dying and all that kind of stuff. Although they don't really push that as much on the forefront, but in some respects, they're talking about, you know, erasing a culture, an existence from the face of the earth. So yeah, it's a serious tone, and so but the lightheartedness was just kind of a counterbalance, I guess, but it didn't work for a lot of people.
No, and John, you just brought up a point that really hooked me into this movie, because it made me think about, like, when you talk about one of George Clooney's speeches, is he talks about
one of the first ones when he's talking about FDR,
and it just made me think about when he's talking about just above it, he's like, you know, you can shoot a man, you can shoot a society or whatever. He goes, but once you erase their accomplishments, then they're nothing. You've wiped them off.
It's like they never existed.
And and that's what really, I was like, I never really thought of it that way until that speech.
Absolutely.
And I was like, wow, okay, so I understand the plight. I understand the plight now. And, you know, that was the mission. And, you know, I was along for the ride.
And you know, it's that point right there. I don't think everybody still gets that. I mean, obviously most people who see the movie, they understand, okay, and then there's always the question, is art worth a man's life? And that's part of the movie as well. But the idea that it's not enough to kill people, but you want to erase the history that they ever existed. And you think about the gravity of that for a second, you go, whoa, that's... And for a lighthearted movie, you're going, okay, and I think that's why people are having issues with it. But for me, that hooked me in. I was going, God, I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
And first of all, I didn't even know this was happening. So I had no idea that they were trying to take everybody's art and all their great accomplishments and eviscerate them, burn them, destroy them, everything. I was not aware of that. And the fact that that's how far this megalomaniac went. And then there was some guy, and it really, well, it wasn't just one guy, but this is George Clooney's character. Frank Stokes was the character in the movie. His real name is Stout.
Yeah.
But
George
he spearheaded the thing and really pushed for it, and along with a bunch of other people, of course, who were involved. But that's just for our purposes. We're talking about the movie so much that they had the wherewithal to go, you know what, this isn't right. No. We can't allow this. Not only do we have to stop them from doing the atrocities that they're doing, but we have to ensure that they don't wipe out the history of man's achievements, whoever they are. And then to top it off, it started only to stop our own people, the Allied forces, from bombing places and destroying buildings and architecture and art, and then it transferred into something else. And I'm going, wow. And on top of that, oh, by the way, let's give it back to them.
Let's give it back to them. Yep, that was another part. Let's try to track it down.
Yeah. Secure it and save it and make sure it gets back to the rightful owners.
And when you think about it,
in history, when have you ever heard that?
No,
Victors go the spoils.
Nope, I never heard of that through any history class that I had growing up. But again, it really was. It is a true mission movie. This was a mission.
Yeah, and
this is a World War II mission to go on, and we didn't know about
during wartime. What a weird mission. Oh, by the way, don't bomb that.
Don't bomb it. Yeah, exactly. I gotta get the art. I'm looking for art.
Yeah.
And
who?
And it was fun.
Art
That's
who?
right, art who. It's and that's the great thing, because
I don't know art, but I know what I like.
I know what I like. I just like. I like how even on their travels, when they were going up to other officers we're looking for art.
Allied
they thought that
officers.
they were crazy too.
Exactly. No, and they had legitimate arguments. I love that. No, I'm not going to send people in harm's way because you want to save a painting.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So all this stuff that I never knew was going on, I felt in a sense I was educated without feeling like I was educated. It opened my eyes up, but it made sense, because what if you wiped out a director's slate of movies? What if you wiped out George Clooney's ER and the movies that he directed and was in? Who is he? And I was
he ever existed? I mean, there's no record of him.
I know.
Or
a society,
exactly
or a civilization.
Get rid of their language, their culture, their anything, their achievements, and they're
gone.
Yeah,
they're just gone. So I was hooked from there.
Yeah. And then that, by the way, sustained me through the movie. I don't know why it hit me so hard. Maybe it didn't other people, but I was just, I couldn't get over that. I was like, oh my God, the stakes for that. I thought they did a good job of setting the stakes, because for me it worked. It was like, I can't even imagine that that's what we're dealing with here, and that this really actually happened.
Yeah, and then, it makes you understand the plight.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really... The trailers and the marketing only said, "Hey, we have to save art," but they didn't. Yeah. They didn't really go into how deep, and I get that. Yeah,
how can you in a trailer? Right. How do you convey that?
So but once I saw the movie and you have that happen, that speech happen, you understand the plight, what they're going for, and then from there it becomes a road movie. It becomes the mission movie. Yeah, I love the gathering of the team,
and it's the trope we've seen many times and everything like that. And but I was okay with it. I said, all right, that's fine.
We've seen it so many times. Yeah. But when was the last time? I mean, outside of you can say Saving Private Ryan is a mission movie, okay? But
it's like getting the team together, get the band back together. It's the same kind of thing. So we've seen it many times.
The Dirty Dozen getting. Yeah, we got to put our team together.
And that's okay. I was fine with it.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. I mean, that's what I appreciated this movie.
I did. And I certainly understand the criticisms, as I've mentioned. And I get why people have problems with tone and everything. I personally didn't, but I understand why other people would. But one of the criticisms that I do agree with is that they didn't spend enough time character development, and I completely agree with that. It would have been nice to know a little bit more about the band we're putting back together, and the stakes that they each had as individuals, and what they were leaving, and what they were putting behind them, and and that would have been wonderful. I think it certainly would have added to the movie.
Yeah.
But again, I went, yeah, it would have been nicer, but it didn't. For me, I still enjoyed the movie. I still found it entertaining. Would it have added? Yes, but it's not. I wasn't going to eviscerate the movie just because of that.
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, again, I'm in 100% agreement with you. I mean, regarding character,
Yeah.
You know, if you want to, we can nitpick and we can go, who had a character arc in this movie?
No,
there
nobody
was
did.
really no character arc.
Yeah.
There was no
because
epiphany.
George Clooney, who's ostensibly the lead, he's the same way in the beginning. He makes the same argument at the beginning that he makes at the end.
that he makes at the end.
And he bookends it, which I love the bookend,
Yep.
but he does it with FDR, and then at the end of the movie, he's doing it with Harry Truman.
Yep.
And so he hasn't really arced. If anything, he has a more deeper understanding of the value of what they've achieved because his friends have died in the process of it.
Sure.
So I think, and I have to say, in thinking in thinking of it like that, and when I was watching the movie, when he's having that last conversation with Harry Truman, and then they cut to the last scene, which there's, obviously you've already seen the movie. There's a spoiler alert, so you see the Madonna.
Right.
It did affect me.
Yeah.
It did. I was like, that's right. If they had not done that, nobody would have been able to see those ever again. Ever. And to think of the tens of thousands of millions of people who have actually enjoyed works of art because of this.
Yeah.
I just went, that got me.
Yeah, and it just made me think of whatever trips I've taken to the Getty Museum.
Exactly.
And
I've been to those museums in Europe, so I mean, I've actually seen them after this has all happened and not realizing, oh my God, had they not done that, I would have never seen that thing at Ghent.
Did you... Did that, so that really came in, because I've never been to those museums overseas.
Yeah,
like
it did.
That,
yeah, absolutely. And I haven't. No, I had seen the Madonna. That's right. I just realizing that because the Ghent thing was just more memorable in my mind.
So the impact for you, knowing what journey it sort of had or may have had, I'm sure it didn't go down, but there was an adventure that these pieces of art went through. Yeah. Almost being destroyed.
How close they were to never being...
Going back to their owners or close facsimile thereof to the best of their capabilities, and now ending up in a museum, whereas, Indiana Jones would always say it belongs in a museum.
That's right, exactly.
I think, again, I don't have... I didn't see those pieces of art or the Belladonna, not the Belladonna.
That's okay.
I haven't seen those, but I understand. Again, for me, it was the
Madonna.
If you wiped all that out, like the loss that it would be, and again, it just got me thinking about if you wiped a certain kind of silent movie out. It goes through this whole restoration process, like. What would it be like if we lost Voyage to the Moon? Like, we wouldn't be able to have Hugo and all these other pieces of art that people are trying to restore.
Yeah.
And I understand this was World War II, but you're right. Once it goes away,
it's away.
It's away.
It's gone. And every art historian understands this. Anybody appreciator of art knows once that piece of art is gone, it's gone. Yeah. There's no way to get that back. It's
above and beyond art, it's like a civilization.
Exactly, because that was the other point I was going to make. That's the material kind of thing and about it, but then there's the human side of that, which is they're trying to erase an entire
population,
and then what I also found so fascinating is that as they're doing the search for art, they stumble across the warehouse of all those crates, and Matt Damon says, "What is this?" And
that scene was very
God. James Granger and Simone, Claire Simone.
That scene.
Okay, we're talking about
because
the scene
you're talking about the scene with the fillings, correct?
Well, the one there's that one, and the other one where Granger, Matt Damon, and Cate Blanchett, who plays Claire Simone, they're in the warehouse, and he goes, "What's all this?" And it's crates upon crates of belongings, people's belongings, and and he goes, "What's this?" And he goes, "Oh, it represents people." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And it was the Jewish people's belongings that were just now going to be discarded or destroyed or whatever, again to erase that.
Right, and
I was just, and it was a great shot because you saw the full depth and you got the scope of it, and this was only one warehouse, and it was a very visual representation of wow, because sometimes it's hard to grasp and you need to see it in different ways, and it's also part of the never forget kind of thing.
And
if it's gone, it can be forgotten.
And don't you? What's great about it too is the simplicity in which Clooney filmed it, and the dialogue. It's very simple. It's like they represent people. Boom, that says it all. It says, and then you see that vast warehouse,
and it reminds you of for me, it reminds me of the Raiders thing when you saw it, and you just go,
wow,
oh, wow. And then to the point that you were making, which is the keg of gold fillings. Yeah. And then you go, what are these? And then you don't know what they are. They just look like gold nuggets. And then as soon as I saw it,
yeah. That scene for me, because I did the same exact thing. I was like, those are fillings.
Those
and
are people,
then, you know, somebody said those are teeth. And I'm like going, oh my head. And they put them in and the movie does it in a not a beat your head over the I'm not going to beat you over the head. I'm going to do this. It'll be a quick line of dialogue. I'm going to visually show you something.
And it felt to me like other documentaries I've seen where when the soldiers would come upon things like this and what they, because Band of Brothers or whatever those documentaries where you see these things and they just, they don't know what they have, and all of a sudden they realize what it is, and they can't quite wrap their head around what do you mean it's teeth? How did they get the? And because they don't know the full scope of it yet. Yeah,
and again, like in any mission movie, like when we see, and I'll even point to Private Ryan as like we talk about a gruel, like that's a very visceral, very. But any mission, Dirty Dozen, Guns and Navarone, even the Great Escapes, each of those movies has their moments of humor. Which is great.
Escape,
right?
The Cooler King,
the cool, and it's so you get that, but then again, it's then you have the meat of the matter or the heavy drama that takes place, and it's a fine balance. Now, Private Ryan's a much different movie. I don't even put it in the same category as like a Dirty Dozen or a Bridge Too Far or things like that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So, but we're talking about we'll talk about mission movies of the past and how it compares and how it pays homage to those, because they were dramatic too. The missions were dramatic. They had to be larger than life. Get those people out there. The team, the way that they band together, that also, the way that a lot of these people banded together, I did feel, I enjoy the little comedic moments that some of them, because it made me.
Well, and I thought that it's different in the way that it did it. It didn't pick the. I mean, it again, as we mentioned, it references other movies and how we get the team together, but it doesn't spend a lot of time with the bonding. Because I bought that because they have the mission was already decided. It's we got to get in and get going. We don't have time to do all this bonding thing. And I didn't really need it, because as soon as they get together, they have to go on their separate ways to do. So that part worked for me as well. Yeah. And part of the bonding occurs as they go on the mission. I mean, let's face it, Bill Murray and Bob Balaban, they don't like each other from the beginning. We get that right away, and then they start to develop a friendship. Same with John Goodman and Jean Dujardin.
Yep.
So we see
they were great.
Exactly. Yeah. So we see, and the fact that Hugh Bonneville's character dies early on is one of the galvanizing forces, because until then, they don't really believe that they belong with these other soldiers, because they don't.
Yeah.
They're not really part of the war effort trying to affect an end to this. They're trying to do something else. It's a totally different job. And in a ways, they are separate.
Yeah, I mean, one's an architect, the other was at the school. I mean, but what I thought was interesting, and it was a good way to maybe get around the bonding, is, and again, I don't know if, I'm just going to say it was portrayed for cinematic purposes, that it seemed as if, Clooney's character there, Frank Stokes, he knew Matt Damon's character. They sort of knew each other from serving together.
Yeah, it's a small art world on the East Coast. Small world. So you knew a curator or two, you knew a music, whatever.
So, getting them to... So I was like, okay, they sort of knew each other. And so the team knows of the other's reputation in a sense.
Like the Hugh Bonneville scene, remember? Thanks, and he says, "Thanks for letting me be part of this." And he goes, "No, you're the best man for the job." Okay, it's a little bit about
It's a little bit about yeah. And that was a nice scene
too.
It was
a great scene
because because there was that line. What was it? Was he shaking or something? There was a line, and
it was a little bit about generosity.
But you know that they had served.
They have a history,
and they have this history, and it's so for that. That was just the seeds for the bonding.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about the various criticisms, but again, there were nothing that so took me out of the movie that when I was done with the movie, and it was like, that movie wasn't that bad. Like, what are they talking about?
I was like, what are they talking? I mean, I saw. Okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I agree. Could have been more character development. Yeah, totally. It's challenging, because for some people it was, and I went, yeah, but it wasn't a speed bump where I went, oh, I can't watch this.
Yeah, I had to. It's funny because a friend that I saw it with.
Yeah. He
made mention of the comedic aspect, and another friend who had seen it, we had spoken about. They were both bothered a little bit by the comedic. One of them, my friend Ryan, had said, well, I wish there was a little more suspense. Like, they seemed to play up the comedy a little bit more than... I was like, for me, it didn't bother me.
I didn't see them playing up the comedy a lot. They did it a few times, but I didn't really see... When they say playing up the comedy, I go, I can't really... Except for the bomb thing and a couple other moments, I don't really see them playing the comedy.
And it was character-driven sort of kind of comedy. It wasn't like somebody slipping on a banana peel.
Although I do... somebody said, well, that piece, the whole mind thing, is only in there for comedy. And it was manipulative. And I go, okay. I mean, like, I guess you can argue that, but I mean...
For me, it was fine. Okay. It worked. Yeah. So, so it's interesting that we're talking about the comedy, and it's, that you and I feel the same way, because it didn't bother me. The things to me that sort of kind of stuck out, outside of the character arc and whatnot, I mean, editing on this movie was like really, let's just say I felt that George Clooney and his editor picked weird times to cut. Case my one, I have two examples. One of which is you have Bill Murray, Bob Balaban, goes out to go relieve himself, and the guy, the German with the gun, comes out.
Oh, and then we cut to another.
And then like literally like, so this is building up, so it's like, ooh, this isn't good, and then all of a sudden, bang, cuts to this other scene, unrelated, and I'm like, wait, I don't care. Like, why are we leaving? Because this is like, this seems to be important. Like, why are we leaving this? It was a weird cut to me. The other cut that was jarring for me too was this scene with John Goodman and the artist. I can never.
Oh, Jean Desjardins.
Yeah, when they were out in that open field.
Yeah.
So they go to the open field. Jean Desjardins goes to walk out to the horse because he sees the horse. John Goodman stretching his legs. He looks over and he sees the soldiers in the bush. And then he looks over and they're like, go get him. And a couple of things were going on that I didn't quite understand what exactly was happening. Like, soldiers in the bush. Apparently there were soldiers somewhere in another bush.
In the other side of the field.
And Jean Desjardins is supposedly in the middle of the field, and you see him, and then they cut, and he's by shrubbery.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what did I just miss? And what geography? Like, these are the things that I noticed.
But missing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I completely agree with you, because I felt the same way, especially the Bob Balaban bit when he's confronted with a German soldier pointing a gun at him, and then we cut away to hold it, and it's like, what?
Why?
And I'm going, are they trying to build suspense, or do they want me to come back? And it did take me out of the movie, and I completely agree that it seemed like an unusual edit, and I was like, okay, we finally got back to it, and I went, okay, we're back on the story.
Yeah, but it took me out of that scene, which had just built up. And I
completely agree.
For like when we talk about comedic,
and I'm wondering what they had to. It felt like, oh, we got to cut around something.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, that's an interesting way to cut around something. But it was curious that they would choose that to use as a cut around.
And maybe I'm just not too bright, but at times I was having trouble with geography as to like. So they have this radio,
right?
And they were surprised that this radio works, and my interpretation was that this radio doesn't have great range, but yet they seem to be talking to people like at all ends of the various Europe.
They're all through Europe,
and I'm like, okay, well, I was having a hard time trying to, with the exception of Matt Damon, because it specifically said where he's going, what he's doing, and I was having trouble with the geography and piecing together where everybody was in relationship, because I didn't think. I was under the impression that this thing was basically two tin cans and a string, and that they were going to be losing communication. So I was like, well, where are they that he can talk to them on this bad radio, but yet they're coming through crystal clear? So I had those kind of issues. Story-wise, again, I enjoyed the acting. I enjoyed the performances. I liked that it was a mission movie. That there isn't too much outside of what we were talking about. you know, it was just surprised. We go back to expectations, and maybe the critics felt the same way. I don't know, but I would just figure you're moving it in February. It's not a December picture.
Yeah, and so I felt like they just wanted to jump on.
Yeah,
to
and
the bad train. It's like
a lot of people said too that it was very slow and boring, which I didn't find it to be boring.
I didn't either. I understand, and again, I understand the criticism, but I felt like well, they're kind of doing a World War II movie, and it felt like they wanted to reference those movies, and it wasn't slow paced for me, but I understand it wasn't quick paced like they do now. But I thought it was perfect for what it was saying and what it was trying to reference, and for me that worked. Yeah, I don't think it was slow.
No, I don't think so either. And another thing that we're all credit is Faden Papamichael, who's the cinematographer.
Right.
The movie looked
great.
It had that feel of the 60s, 70s World War movie picture, and I appreciated that. I'll also say another scene for me that really worked was when they came onto Normandy Beach.
Oh yeah, I love that scene.
It was a great scene, and it's after
because it's a month later, whatever. Right? I can't remember what the timing was, but it was definitely much later.
It was after the events that Private Ryan has just etched into my head
indelibly.
And when they come across that, it was just a great
because the barbed wire, the metal spiked thing they're still there, and the trusses or whatever. Yeah, but obviously it's free of any bodies, so you know it's been a while. But you go over the hill there, and then you see all the masses of soldiers and the tents and everything. And I go, wow.
Yeah, and I also like the tethered like Zeppelin like balloons.
Right. Yeah, and all the battleships in the harbor. Yeah, I thought that was great.
Which by the way, is I have to take credit. Technicolor's visual effects.
Way to go!
Did that?
It looked great, by the way. In the movie, I was going, "Wow, that looks." I just went, "That looks cool."
It looks really good, and the impact of Normandy, because they mention Normandy before they get to Normandy, and you're like, "Oh yeah, we have the forces invading Normandy," and you just go, "Oh, we know how that's going to turn out." Yeah. It's like, ooh, so when they show up, they already know how it turned out.
Again, I thought that was for me, it was a very smart choice. Because we all have these images, as you mentioned, of what that's like. And to go there afterwards, and I go, wow, I've never seen that. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, and
because they even took us on the vessel, the landing vessel, and the water spraying and stuff, and you're thinking, Private Ryan, when that gate comes, bullets and tracers, everything's gonna be, and it doesn't happen, and they go, and that was very interesting to see.
Yeah, and the way they come off the boat too, it was the ghosts of that battle,
and it already felt like hallowed ground.
Yeah. Already, and you're right. We're talking about a month,
And the metal trusses, those felt like headstones to me. I mean, that's what it looked like. That's what it felt like to me.
And that's the way Clooney directed. Would you agree? I mean, I think Clooney directed that scene, and the way that they performed is they felt that they were at a memorial. There was reverence there. So. We're talking about this movie that's getting panned. That we sort of like that has these moments in it that are really good.
When they're walking by and those guys are making all the crosses.
Yeah.
And those are the crosses. I go, oh wow. Yeah. Because you've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we we're talking about a mission movie, and we're talking about a World War II movie, and again, I just don't understand. Clooney did a very good job directing this film, and his cast of characters that he put together, I thought were worked very well. So yeah, I think the expectations being that this was supposed to come out in December, the marketing made it prestige. Maybe Clooney didn't go out enough to say, "Hey, I'm taking this out because I'm not done," or I don't know.
I just think they did a horrible job of managing expectations. I think what happened was it got out. And then it just the steamroll happened, and they couldn't get it back. And I go, oh man! And because I think if they had managed expectations a little bit, or if they had marketed it slightly differently, I think it would have been received vastly differently.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, again, coming back in August, first seeing the trailer, I am not thinking this is the 34%.
No,
and I'm not even thinking that this is a George Clooney project, because he makes good movies. Like he's a good director. So you know, when you're putting this
but it does
cast
seem to
together,
make, and I think, and I don't know if this is in any way part of this discussion, but I'll say it because
Yeah,
he seems to make smaller movies in terms of good night and good luck. It seems self-contained, pretty contained, and then Ides of March, fairly contained, right? It's, I mean, it's, you know, but it's more the in stuff rather than the huge thing.
The Chuck Barris movie, which it's escaping me, with Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, I can't remember.
A good movie.
Yeah, yeah. Really again, it's, you know, and this one has a bigger scope, and I think because it had a bigger scope, people went crazy or something. I don't know, but I still thought
maybe because it wasn't as intimate as those other movies. They're more character driven, perhaps. I don't know, but you know, look.
For me, I mean, I agree that again, the character arc's not there really, but the story was so compelling to me, just that this really happened, and that, oh my God, and I was, the whole time I'm wondering, is it worth a man's life? And it wasn't, you know. You know, I still struggle with it because I mean, I certainly agree that you don't want to erase somebody's history, culture, all that kind of stuff. But you're putting people in harm's way just for, and if you equate it with a man versus a painting, then no, the painting's not worth it. Right. But if you're getting rid of everything. Then then it starts to be a slightly different debate. Yeah,
I agree. And you know, it's when we talk about it's I'm glad you brought up his other movies, because maybe we can look them up, you know, because this is a bigger movie for him to direct. It's a bigger scope. And you know, we're in agreement to what we think he was trying to accomplish, is paying an homage to this sort of thing while making a good while taking something and bringing it to light that the public or people didn't understand. They probably looked at it and said, this could be this could be cinematic. You know, the movie, its production budget was like $70 million. That's big. And then when you throw in the P&A, it was like $100 million.
I mean, let's face it, they had a lot of extras. They had a lot of tanks and stuff. Yeah. You know, they had a lot of that stuff.
So we'll see. I mean, its opening weekend domestic gross is about $22 million, and right now it's about $27 million. You know, we'll see how it plays out.
Well, it's just got so much to overcome with such a bad, and for me, unjustly. I mean, I'm not saying it's a gold medal winner or anything like this being in our.
How long ago did you see this movie? Like
yesterday.
You saw it yesterday. It was I saw it on Saturday, and I will say it was predominantly it was an older crowd. It wasn't. In fact, I think a family came in thinking that it was a Lego movie. I think they walked into the wrong theater. They left. Yeah, they left. But you Lego know, it's definitely playing towards an older.
Well, yeah, I would. Well,
crowd.
The subject matter alone, I think.
Yeah.
Would lend itself to that.
And I also think that, you know, we can talk about Clooney's adaptation with Grant Henslow and it being based off the book. And, you know, I didn't go into this, I didn't go into the movie thinking that it was going to be a quote unquote history lesson. I didn't think, I knew that history was involved, and it was a part of history that we said we didn't see. You know, upon research, it was, you know, I didn't go in thinking that every character was necessarily real. And then when we find out that, yes, pretty much the characters that are in the movie were based off of the
some
actual
characters, you
know, and you find
but there were many more than 7 people involved in this.
There were many more than 7 people, and there were women involved as well, which is very fascinating. And you know, I just find that the whole thing. Again, when I researched it, I was like, "Wow, this is
I got even more fascinated."
Yeah, I was more fascinated, and again, I'm not sure about these people's travels and adventures and what happened to them. Yeah, and I understand you got to make this cinematic, but I do know this for a fact is that in San Francisco, for example, it was just it was a news story this past week. One of the paintings that the Momuments Men saved is now being showcased at a San Francisco museum.
There you go.
So. The Momuments Men, we do know that troop or that it existed. We know that they saved art. You've seen it.
Yeah.
And now you have a history, a little bit more history to that art, and you can see what they've done and their accomplishments. So it didn't bother me that Granger's actual name is Romier.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Well, that's the other thing, because Granger represents a bunch of people, not just one person. Yeah, it's based off one guy, but it's a bunch of different people. And the other thing, I think that's some criticism too, is that it's based off this book, and it's the book is by, let's see, Robert Edsel. And apparently, I haven't read the book, so I don't know the source material, but it's apparently a very good book. And a lot of people who've read the book and have seen the movie are disappointed because it doesn't hold up to the book. Well, I say, what movie does? I mean, rarely does any movie. You always got to see the movie first. And so if you know a book's going to be made into a movie, wait to read it until you see the movie. And then, because then you can enjoy them both. Yeah, well, I'm gonna. I found a shirt that that I have to buy, and the shirt says "Never judge a movie by its book." Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I'm it's true. It's true because I mean, how could you? It's a great story, and a lot of people are upset because he didn't tell the story of the real monument or whatever, because there's over 300 or there's some 350 or something like that. Something like that involved, and you can't really tell that story, and then they're saying, well, then you didn't make it specific enough because it should have been about one person, could have been about Frank, Stout, is it George Stout, I believe? George Stout. Yeah, because there's a guy that was over a year in Europe trying to save all this art and apparently only took a day off in that entire year to do all, and then went off to Japan to do the same thing. I mean, it's like, wow, that would have been great. That could have been a wonderful story too, to just tell his story. Absolutely, that would have been fine. But just because they didn't do that doesn't mean that this is a bad effort for doing this. No, and I think getting to light what Momuments Men means and what it was all about, and that there was an actuality this troupe that did that. Yeah, I think is the important thing, because too, I think even for kids, like, it's the kind of stuff that's not. I never read about this in high school or in college, so I think. Like, maybe a high school teacher will say, hey, folks, this is a part of history. Like, there's this movie out and we can read the book or something. And, it's not like, it's very non-offensive. There's nothing about it, and it's all about saving culture, which I think is, well, why shouldn't this be taught now? Yeah. Like, now bring it to light. Now, one thing, too, is that Edsel, the author, he was fine with it. He even said, he goes, look, I understand they have to make a movie. It's not necessarily my book, but I'm just glad that the story is being told. Yeah. I'm happy that it's being brought to light, that there are these pieces of art, and that there was a troupe and some, that went out and did this because of its importance. Yeah, hugely important. I'm still wrapping my head around that. The fact that we went out there to do this, which is amazing to begin with, and that we did it not just because we wanted to steal it, and the riches go to the victor and stuff like that. But like the Russians. The Russians wanted to steal. I don't know how accurate that is. I haven't done the research on that. But if that part is accurate, I go and we can argue if you want that. Well, the Russians were they needed something to bring them. I mean, whatever, you can argue that point. Right. I'm not going to argue that point. My point I'm going to make is that we weren't even thinking about that. At least the way it was portrayed in the movie. Absolutely. We were thinking, no, get this back to the rightful owners. Yeah, no. And how high-minded is that? I mean, where do you see that? I mean, you don't. And that's what made that the other great scene is when Balaban and Maury go to that German officer. Stahl's house. And they see all this art. Yeah. Yeah. That was a great scene. And again, like, it set up enough tension because you didn't, for one moment, I thought this was going to turn into an Inglourious Bastard scene in the basement, like guns were kind of. Is Bill going to pull the gun out? No, but you didn't have to. You just put it on the table. Yep. And that was it. Like, and how good was Bill Murray? How good were Bill Murray and Bob Allen together? And that scene with Bill Murray, the one where he's taking the shower, and Bob Allen puts the song on for his parents, and I go, by his family. I go, right. I wasn't expecting that, and all of a sudden it comes out, and I got to say that got me too. It's like a lot of people say it's manipulative. Every movie is manipulative. For me, that one worked. It felt, and it was great to see Bill Murray just take that moment and be there with it. When I saw that scene, I thought it was a fantastic scene. I don't know why, but it just took me back to something that, God, this was something that I would see in MASH. Like, because they were in the barracks, in the shower, and exactly, playing the music. It was a very nice scene. I also liked their. Like, I just liked the way, like, how they disliked one another or so, but how Bill Murray just taunted him all the time. Yeah, exactly. And you can tell as actors, I think they've worked together on You're talking about Murray and Balaban?
Yeah, Murray and Balaban have worked
Moonrise
Kingdom, and
okay.
So you could tell that there's probably some they may have camaraderie there, but I felt that amongst the whole cast
they did
together.
Well,
I thought
Goodman
that the chemistry
and Desjardins from the artist. So
and I thought that was really fun. Monuments Men, short for here we go. Monuments Men, short for Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archive Selection of the Allied Military Effort, a relatively unsung group of 345 men and women from 13 countries who discovered thousands of stolen artworks between the years of 1943 and 1951.
Yeah.
So that's a good chunk of time.
Absolutely. And it was also great to know that there were citizens of whatever country, whether it be France or Austria, whatever.
Yeah.
They were also realizing what was happening, and they were trying to ferret away works of art so they wouldn't get stolen or lost to anonymity.
Cate Blanchett's character.
Yeah, that as well. The miners who blew up the mine, not just to protect the art, but also to protect their livelihood.
Their livelihood,
yeah. Exactly. But, again, I just, all those little parts of it that that's great.
And how about the scene? Again, how about the scene where Cate Blanchett, all right, so that's Stahl.
Right.
He's cutting and running.
Mm-hmm.
And she runs and she's on top of like the bridge,
the
overpass, and he's getting into and she's like, I see you, and he pulls out a gun, and she just stands like, you're gonna shoot me, but I'm gonna stand defiant to you, you pig. Mm-hmm. And it was for me again, that was like, wow, that was a really good scene. Yeah. And again, when you think about Dirty Dozen or Guns of Navarone, they usually have like a strong scene like that. It's a dramatic scene, but ultimately, and I think like sometimes with a character, when you have so many characters, sometimes if your characters are likable enough, you might be able to forgive. There's not much character arc, but you're already you're involved with their lives as of the right here, right now, and I guess that could be a reason why I'm a little bit forgiving about character, because we don't know much about either one of these,
right?
Other than Bill Murray was an architect.
And that would have been interesting. Again, I agree that, it would have been nice. One of them started the ballet or something? He started the actual Met. I don't know what it was, one of those things. But anyway, my point is, it would have the one moment they had was George before he left for Europe. He's saying, he's looking in on his son who's asleep. So you realize, he has a family. But you don't really see everybody else's family and what they left, except you do get little bits of it along the way. We just said the Bill Murray thing, where you realize, he has a whole family. He's at an age now where he shouldn't have to go to the war, right? And this is what they left in order to go do this. And I think it kind of got overshadowed, or people weren't paying attention to that, because there was the fact that Cate Blanchett has the most character arc. I mean, she can't trust anybody, and nor should she.
Yeah.
What in this world makes you think I should trust anybody?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes and that, I think they did a really good job of withholding, of not letting her, change her arc, because in all evidence to the contrary, why should she?
Right. No, and I actually found that relationship, again, did I know early on that Matt Damon's character had a wife?
Yeah.
Perhaps, but the relationship between he and Blanchett was the way that built, and having to gain her trust.
Right.
I thought played out very nicely. Mm-hmm. And then they
the nice
shared
little
that
thing with
nice,
the tie at the end. I mean,
the thing at the tie at the end was great.
Yeah.
The nice where she finally opens up and she invites him to the apartment at her place.
More than that,
but the main important thing was, here are my journals.
Yeah.
This is everything. I'm trusting you.
Yeah.
This is my life. Mm-hmm. And like that, the way that was played out was very nice.
I thought that was great.
And
then the fact that he left too. And I thought all of that was wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
And for me, Cate really held that emotional arc thing going, and I thought that was terrific.
Yeah. So here we are. We're talking about a movie that gets much maligned, but yet we've pointed at scenes that I think could rival other scenes in movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it works. One thing that we haven't talked about yet too that I really appreciated, especially when we're talking about an homage, a throwback, was the music in this movie.
That was definitely a throwback. And
come on, right?
When I first heard it, I went, "Wow, that's an unusual choice." But it really worked for you, right?
For me, it did.
Yeah, no, I get it. When it was happening, I'm going, I'm not sure about that. It was a little jarring for me.
Bridge
over the river. But then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's what he's doing here. That was a cue for me. I go, he's paying homage to all this, so of course he should use this,
Absolutely.
because it did seem so dated. But I go, but that's where we are. That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. Marissa, is it possible to bring us some of that thing? Yeah, no, and I loved it because it was a common theme throughout the entire.
Oh, they used it every time they.
Yep. Whenever they were moving,
I was like, wow. But I know that some people had real challenges with it. I loved it. I understand it.
Me too.
I understand it, but I go, but you either had to surrender to what he was trying to achieve or not. And I think a lot of people just didn't. They wanted it to be a movie other than what it was.
Right. I think, and again, going back to, we've talked about war movies. Most recently, Lone Survivor.
Right.
Which I guess you could say is sort of a mission movie.
Yeah. And
right. That goes really bad.
Absolutely.
True story.
Yeah.
It's just a different mission movie, and it becomes something different, and it becomes very gritty.
Right.
We talked about this.
And I loved that movie. I thought what it did was amazing.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And
again, another thing where it's a true story, and if I hadn't known it was a true story, I'd be going, I don't believe this at all.
I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And again, there's room enough in the cinematic world where you can depict another side of the war that it doesn't have to be gritty and violent and so true to life, and you can depict this.
And here's the thing: had you done that with this kind of movie, I wouldn't have believed it, because these guys at their age and all that, I wouldn't have believed that museum curators and art historians and architects would be out there kicking ass and taking names. Yeah. That's not what it is.
No, and how about the basic training scenes? Okay,
tell me
you didn't think of Stripes.
Oh, sure,
for
of course.
1 second.
I think I would say, I'm going, if I'm George Clooney or Grant and I'm writing this scene, I'm going, we got Bill Murray. Oh, you're damn straight. We're doing some sort of thing with it. I mean, that wall looked exactly. He almost looked exactly like he did.
The wall, and when he took the gun and did that, and I'm like going, the only thing's missing is him saying that's a fact, Jack.
Yeah, exactly. And I go, how could you not make some sort of nod to it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But for me, it was seamless, and it was almost like a wink and a nod, and I was like, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And seeing everybody go through the crawling on the ground underneath the barbed wire, taking shots, and then when John Goodman stands up, I was just going,
John Candy.
Yeah, I was going, oh my god, yeah. And then I'm thinking, wait, he shouldn't be. I'm almost sure they might be using live rounds. And he's like, it's okay, they're not using live rounds. And it's like, yeah, we are. Yeah. And when he stands up, it was great. Yeah. So those moments of comedy, I welcomed. I didn't mind them. I didn't mind them whatsoever.
For me, I when in those moments, I didn't really think, it's not like they were going out of the way to get him, and I don't think it was overdone. And they had enough speed where they just went right by him. If they didn't fly, that's fine.
Yeah, and to your point too, you're right. I wouldn't. An aged Bill Murray, I do not. He's not sneaking around. Like a spy or a fully trained soldier for that matter. That would be more unbelievable than him trying to get through boot camp.
But I also like the fact that Matt Damon, who's Jason Bourne, has so little action to do in this film. He's the guy that's got he's more in the headspace trying to gain someone's trust. There's nothing to do with being.
Again, the team that Clooney puts together or put together for this movie, I think, really worked. And again, Stephen Maroney is the gentleman that did Marioni did the music.
Yeah,
Melissa, you'll appreciate this. He did the original Hunger Games.
There you go.
August Osage County. So
Osage.
Osage. And Ides of March. He worked for Clooney on Ides of March. Contagion. So the guy Babel he did. So he's done some good work. But I think the work here.
Well, it was timely. It was certainly timely. Yeah, it seemed like a very specific choice. And again, I think you either had to accept it and go with it, or be frustrated by it. And
would you disagree that somewhat of the pitch meeting went, okay, there is this group of men, it's a true story, called the Momuments Men.
Yeah.
They have this great story that World War II, they're preserving art, and I want to take that and I want to throw it into, I want to pay homage to those movies of yesteryear that were patriotic, and they had this particular theme, and you have these good characters together, and they're saving art, and it's somewhat true. We're not making it up.
Yeah.
Could it be much different? I want to pay homage to this.
Yeah, but I think it's a difficult pitch. I think what any studio's going, you're going to do what? You want to do what? I mean, don't you think it was because it's like, what's the market for this?
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of the business side of it,
Sure.
But then you go, okay, but here's what I'm gonna get, and you go, yeah, okay, that sounds more interesting.
That sounds
we
good.
can give you X amount.
Let me see the script.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
you know, and it's George Clooney, and he has cred, and again, I already said it, but you know, credit to him. He stood up by his product.
Yeah.
He didn't abandon. He did all the press work, and he stood up when it you know, again, moving a picture further back and taking it out of a fray.
Yeah.
To put it into February is usually not a good sign. In fact, Phil and I even had this conversation when they moved it back.
What?
And Phil was like, ooh, that's really not a good sign. I said, but you know what? Clooney said he didn't feel the movie was ready. And if he doesn't feel the movie's ready,
Then he shouldn't release
I'm
it.
like,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I give him credit for whatever the reasons are. And so, but now though, now that all the pieces have come together, I like the movie, but it's not Academy Award.
No, I think it was a wise choice.
Right.
I mean, I think it was smart, and I'm hoping that the extra time gave him what he needed.
Right.
Because it seems like it did.
Yeah.
And absolutely, it would have been. I probably would have been killed.
Yeah.
More than it was.
Let me ask you this, because I was thinking about this while I was watching the movie. Had it been released in December, and had I gone seen it, and had I, you know, and I was buying into the marketing, and in fact, I was even telling people, pardon me, and I think we even talked about it here, going, that looks like it's going to be a really good movie. Like, that looks like it's got some good meat to it.
I have no idea.
And I was just wondering, had it released in December, and had I seen it?
Had you seen this movie in December with that hype, how would you feel? I don't know. That's a very interesting, because I do know that prior to going to this movie, you know, having seen the 34% on Rotten Tomatoes, I went, oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I have no idea how much that affected me. I don't think I went in with high expectations or huge, but I don't think I went in thinking, you know, I wasn't dreading it or anything like that.
Right.
And I try as best I can to take the movie as it comes to me. That's as much as I can. I try not to pay attention to any of the press or anything.
Yeah, and I was just
So
thinking,
who knows?
Maybe I would have felt the way a lot of critics did. But I will say this too. So the movie's coming out. It's on the eve of release. It was going up against Lego Movie,
Right.
I believe. Okay, so
Which Lego movie did real well.
oh my god, yeah, and on top of that, I remember the reviews coming in. I go to Rotten Tomatoes, always check that out. And you know, as the reviews start filtering in, it started off maybe in the 50s. And I was like, 50? I said, ooh, that's right down the middle. But instead of going up, it was going south.
Yeah.
And I remember even going in front of me going, can you believe this? Like, I can't believe that this is a 34% tile movie.
Yeah, I can't. I have a hard time with it because I go, even given whatever issues it has that we've already discussed, I just don't. I can't see that. I say, why? There seems to be something beyond just the movie itself that are causing that reaction.
Yeah, and I was a little bit. I'll say I went in with a little bit of trepidation. Like, like if this movie is as bad as I'm hearing, am I going to waste 2 hours of my time? Like because you can't. Once you see 34%, you can't unsee that.
Yeah, I know. That's
and
it.
it's not going to get much better.
Yeah.
It'll only go further down. And like we saw it come out, and I'm like, I was even talking to same friend Ryan last night, and saying we were telling a gentleman that we know, and it was saying it's definitely not as bad as the reviews are suggesting.
Everybody I've talked to has actually seen it. Has said that.
Yep.
And I'd say that's about 20 people.
Yeah.
That I've talked to that I say, yeah, you know, it's a lot better than everybody says.
It's a lot better than.
And I'm going, wow, okay. Well, and then I ask, okay, so if that's a 34, what would you give it if it was? And they're saying 65, 70.
Yeah, I mean, if I were grading on 4 stars, I'd give it about 2.5.
So,
like right around there. Now, it's not saying that it's a bad movie. We have totally brought to light scenes that we feel work and work very well. We've talked about the editing. We've talked about character arc and story development, and you know, yes, all of those issues are in this movie, but there is like, go ahead, go back, go watch some old war movies, pre-Private Ryan. Watch even movies like The Big Red One.
Oh wow, yeah,
which is really a solid movie. Or watch The Dirty Dozen, or watch what's another? Where Eagles Dare. Isn't like those are exciting movies. They were. You know, they were the movies of the time, and yes, they brought up the war aspect. You know, I mean, movies like Platoon brought war, made it real. Platoon and then like A Private Ryan, they made war real. Outside of like the John Wayne kind of, you know, those movies had their heft, but they were good entertainment. They had drama, they had some comedy. Watch those movies, watch Monuments Men, and you'll see exactly what they're going for. And maybe you won't dislike it as much. Or if you don't see those movies, you're not going to dislike Monuments Men as bad as those reviews are saying. It's an enjoyable movie. You're going to have a good night out, or a good whenever you see it. You'll walk out going, that didn't suck. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not sure they want to use that as their
I'm not saying you put that on the poster, but
exactly.
it didn't suck.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
I did talk to one person who was vehement and passionate about his hate for it, and
really,
I just kept going. I don't I don't know what to say to it, because it didn't matter. He just hated everything about it. And I said, okay, all right.
Was there anything? See, like, I wish that person were here, because I'm just
that would have been interesting. I couldn't.
Like, I'm just curious as to, was it, did he find it boring or dumb or
long,
nostalgic?
Exactly. It was this. That was one of the things I go, well, it's kind of hard not to be nostalgic when you're talking about something that already happened, and and you have an affinity for it.
Sure.
So of course that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I read some reviews that said, like, it's just Clooney giving speeches throughout the entire thing. It opens up with the speech. It ends with the speech. Yeah, and he talks very, he's got to rally his troops together. He's the leader. He's got to give, in a sense, speeches. He didn't bother me. In fact, I enjoyed watching him.
And I don't know. Maybe it's because I liked the speeches. Maybe it's because that the text of that and the manner, because it wasn't just him talking. They did a good job of covering it. They had all kinds of visuals to go over it. But maybe it's just I appreciated the story so much, and that I was okay with him. But it's not like he was pontificating. At least I didn't experience it that way. But and I'm a history buff, but it's not like I'm a nerd geek about history. And I love art, but I don't hang out at museums every day. So it wasn't just because I am a fan of the arts. I just took the movies as it came to me, and I went, wow, there's a lot more here that I enjoyed about this movie than detracted from it.
Yeah, no, there wasn't the things that detracted me from the movie that took me out of it were the things we discussed.
Yeah.
There was editing and certain things like that. But I did get involved with the characters. I didn't mind the brevity, or I didn't mind the comedy, I should say. Right. I didn't take the movie as being lighthearted just because it didn't have people shooting the hell out of other people.
Yeah, well, because in war movies you kind of expect that, and that's you can't.
This wasn't that.
This isn't that. Yeah.
This wasn't that. And again, let me ask you this, because we were trying to figure this out too. That scene that we talked about in the field.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So who are the other? So we had the Americans
Germans on one side,
and the Germans
on the other.
Okay, and they knew where they were. All right, so and he got caught in the crossfire. They were basically caught in crossfire.
And they had no idea.
Get the hell out of here.
This, happenstance. Should we go down this road, down that road? Well, we're not going down that road. We'll go this way.
Right.
And just, they see a horse. And it reminded me of Michael Clayton.
Right.
And I went, well, because he sees the horse, and the car blows up. Right. And I'm going, is he making some sort of allusion to Michael Clayton? It's like, what the hell is that?
He likes horses.
Exactly. But, in this case, it didn't save him.
It was and it was sad to see. Like, I liked that character. He and it was sad when John Goodman, they come up to the house and he's pounding on the door for help, and he's got his bloodied hands. And, it had, where there may not have been character development, it had character sympathy. Yeah. And you liked these guys.
Yeah, it was kind of, well, first of all, we know, how many times have we seen these kinds of stories where, it's at a time of war. Now, granted, they're not in the battle, so to speak, but you start to realize that's right. They're still in a war zone. They're still battling this war. So it's not like you need a lot to remind us of that, because we're already there. We have it in our memories, in our DNA at this point. So when things like that happen, it already calls up all of our history. So we're bringing a lot of it, for me, we're bringing it with us to the movie. At least I was.
Yeah, and these are people who we learned had already served. They had already done their service. Yeah. That's how Clooney knows them, because they had already served. They've
World
done their piece.
War I, for crying out loud.
And it's like, these are the people, because I'm going to bring them back. I'm going to reassemble the team. It's almost like the grumpy old men of the Expendables for art, so to speak. You know, he's bringing back the best of the best for this.
Okay.
And,
all right.
you know, but I get that. And the camaraderie that the actors had, and even, you know, I like that Matt Damon was on his mission with Cate Blanchett, but when he comes back, you know, he's welcomed back, and, you know, that they're, again, I just think it's a testament. I mean, Clooney obviously brought these people together for a reason. It wasn't just to have a good time, although from what I understand from the interviews, there were a lot of pranks taking place on set.
Clooney.
But that's, and you know,
Murray.
and good for him. And I do, you know, George, if you ever watch this, we're not maligned. We do not believe you deserved, you know, much of the negative reviews that you got. This is a much better movie than Rotten Tomatoes and all the critics would lead you to believe. I think, and hopefully, if you've been watching this, that means you've watched the movie. Hopefully, you feel the same way.
Well, it would be interesting if you didn't, because I would, you know, I've read some of the arguments, and I can't really debate them, because I understand the grain of them is true. It's like, okay, it doesn't, yeah, you're right. It doesn't have a lot of character development. It doesn't have a lot, but it had enough for me. And again, I think maybe it's because I just enjoyed the story so much more, and in the context of it, and like for instance, the idea that the Russians were taking them. And if we don't get these, they will take them, and they'll be gone forever as well.
Yep.
And I was like, wow. I mean, and again, I thought they could have used that a little bit more, because you know, that ticking time, you know, or that we're in a race to do this and all that. I get all that. That would have been, you could have heightened the stakes a little bit. Sure. Absolutely. They needed to do that a little bit more, but it was there.
Yep.
And that works for me. But yeah, because a lot of people said you need to ratchet up the stakes, and I didn't
disagree. See that. And people were like, I wanted it to be grittier, and I'm like, but it doesn't have to be. Like, it didn't. Like, this is again,
they wanted it to be a different movie.
Yeah, they wanted it to be a different movie, and I'm like, just go back and rent, you know, or see some of these other mission movies where they didn't necessarily have to be gritty, and you bought that these people were being thrown together to do this job or to steal. Three Kings is another example. Of a good mission movie, in a sense, too.
Much grittier.
Much grittier.
Yes.
Much grittier. But
Very
you know,
well done.
George Clooney was in that, as well as Spike Jones,
Mm-hmm.
David O. Russell,
and Lone Survivors.
Right.
Mark Wahlberg.
It's my head. Look at that. Yeah. We just did a 3 degrees of Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I mean, all these movies coming in, paying homage, I think it works. I think this movie was much better than what you would lead to believe if you just went on to Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes.
So yeah, what did Metacritic? I think of a 5 out of 10 something.
It wasn't too favorable on Metacritic either. No,
right, well,
no,
I can't remember what it was.
No. And I'm glad. You know, it's nice to know. You know, if I were an art curator, if I were
2 out of 100.
50, yeah,
so 5 out of 10.
Yeah. Hey, I would say I would put up Saved by the Monuments Men.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Saved by the Monuments
Men. Yeah, that'd be a great
idea. Or better yet, get people to donate their art and just call it a Monuments Men museum.
I think
that would be a great historic thing to do.
And I think that was the last thing that I want to talk about, which was that I think some people, at least the few I've read, that had real difficulty with it is because it's such an important story that they didn't think it handled it well enough. And I went, oh, okay. So it didn't meet their expectations because you know, it is such an important story and we don't know about it, and therefore it should have taken more time to like a miniseries. I'm going, well, he didn't do a miniseries, he did a movie. But I understand that criticism. I do. It's not. I don't share it because I think the movie was better than they felt about it. But I certainly understand it because you could do a miniseries. You could do. I mean, because it's a weird sell, but yeah, you could do a miniseries on it.
You could have done an epic movie. You could have been a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie too, just like they used to be. I mean, that's the one thing he didn't pay homage to. Thankfully, is he didn't make it a long movie. It was just under 2 hours, or maybe around that 2 hour mark.
It could have been a Wolf of Wall Street.
It could have been. It could have been, or it could have been like those Great Escape is a long movie.
And, very long movie.
You know, so it could have been like that. That, like I said, that's the one thing he didn't pay homage to, which is fine. And those people who figure it's too much of an important topic, I didn't think they took the topic lightly.
I don't think they did.
I thought they treated the people and I thought the characters were treated with respect, but I thought the topic was I thought the topic, most importantly, was treated with respect. And when I came out of the movie, I was like, I didn't know that this happened. I had no idea that these people existed. when I was reading about it, doing research, it made me, I'm like, God, I'm actually glad I saw the movie because, and I'm glad over this show because I did research it and found out, wow, this was really important. And the movie was fine. The movie brought it up to light.
Yeah.
And I think Clooney wanted to do that.
And for that alone, I appreciate the movie.
Yep. But he wanted to have fun too.
Because then again, it's another the metaphor I love, because much like saving all that art is now it's available, saving this story makes the story available, the history available. And had he not said it, it would have been gone.
Right.
And I just think the metaphor is great.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. A super point, actually. You're right. Had this story not come to light, I still would have been oblivious to it all.
Exactly. And my life's richer for it. I'm so much more respectful. I mean, not that I didn't have respect, but I'm just amazed that we got something, I mean, really right as the government. I mean, something, you know what I mean?
That's right.
Not you know, because obviously it's the greatest generation, World War II, was, you know, the last, whatever they call it, righteous war, whatever you want to call it. You know, I'm not going to get into the debate about that part of it, but just the fact that it seemed, the way it was portrayed and the way I've taken it so far is we did everything right on that regard.
Yep.
We stopped it from being destroyed.
Yep.
We found it, secured it, and then got it back to the people who it belonged to.
Yeah. But when does that ever happen?
Exactly. When does that ever happen? And
somebody finds an iPod in the street.
Yeah. And then you made a movie about it. And for me, it was a compelling, interesting movie with characters that I liked to watch. And it was entertained by it. By the end of it, I was going, I'm so glad I saw this.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I feel like I couldn't agree with you more on this one. So, I think that's, and again, you know, it's legacy. I don't know what the legacy is going to be. I think that it brings it to light. Yeah. Like, people may not remember this movie, say 20 years down the line.
No, but
Momuments Men may now be taught in college, may now be taught in high school.
I mean, honestly, I went back and I looked at some of the pictures I took when I was in Europe, and some of this, I go, that was in the movie.
So, yeah.
And I would hope that anybody who would be touring Europe and these places of art would recognize that, wow, if it had not been for this group, that I would never have been able to see this.
And now we know about this.
And the castle Neuschwanstein, where they found all those Rodins and stuff, I'd been to that castle.
Really?
Absolutely.
Is it as beautiful as?
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. But just that kind of thing, and then to realize, well, even the Mona Lisa, not the Mona Lisa, excuse me, Last Supper.
Okay.
The idea that it was bombed and that only that wall, and the way they tried to hold that together and keep that, and for 2 years that was left open, exposed to the element, and it was just going, they just put that in there. And I'm going, and I just loved all that.
Yeah. No, it's,
that to me right there tells you the stakes. Look, if we don't do this, that
goes away. We've never had it.
Last Supper would have been gone.
Yep. Yeah. And again, thankfully, this movie brings Momuments Men to light. And maybe it'll open up people's minds. And maybe its legacy is not so much that maybe it's remembered as a movie, but now it's more cognizant of our history.
Well, I also hope that with some time and the hype gone, that people will just take it for what it is when it comes to them, rather than be listening to the 34% or the people who, you know, who are even on the other side, because there are some people who think, oh my God, it's amazing. And
sure.
But just, you know, accept it for what it, just let it come to you.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to use this analogy, not that it'll have become this movie, but to your point, you know, look what time did for It's a Wonderful Life.
There you go. That's right.
I'm not saying we have It's a Wonderful Life here.
I understand that, but what you're making the point is that sometimes with time a movie is received better in a different context.
Absolutely.
And so it could be true.
It could. I mean, you know, you could look at it, but at the very least, maybe now, maybe even kids or schools will focus a little bit more on the art history of the war.
Yeah.
Because this obviously is a big part of art and history together.
Yeah, and it's even beyond that, it's talking about the preservation of humanity and cultures and achievement, and not just art for art's sake, but even beyond that.
Beyond that, and
is that all of this has value, and we should be asking that question too, because what is the value of arts in a society?
Right. And what we're talking about is we're talking about film. We're talking about art, and that's what we're doing now. And as a film guy and film preservation and loving all that stuff, and I don't want to see certain things go away. I don't want, you know, and I'm glad that there are restoration processes in place. Like I just picked up It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, done by Criterion, who, like, again, I'm so happy for a group like Criterion that'll piece together and put together like the most closest version of the traveling roadshow version of that movie.
Wow.
Or that Universal took so much time to take the film elements of Jaws to put them together and restore, like, I don't want classic movies to go away. Mm. And you can only do that through restoration, because can you imagine, like, not having old Marx Brothers movies or Streetcar Named Desire or, Wizard of Oz, which we talked about. I mean, that's what this movie is about. And again, it was war-torn, but we have to have a preservation, because it defines us in a way that people can look back. There's an art history that people look back. And we talk about it here. We've talked about it when we talk about, like, when we did Shakespeare in Love or other movies that we've talked, the older movies. There's a history. And I love looking back at that history, because it's a moment in time in which distribution in the movies that were released are different than today, and how it's evolved. And that is what the Momuments Men is about. It's preserving that history. It's a moment of time that's important, that we should never lose sight of. And the Momuments Men, their mission was to save history, so that generations and civilizations can look back to see what was going on, what transpired. So that's the importance of Momuments Men to me.
And not only does it do that ably, but as it stands on its own, it's a fine movie. It's a good movie. I enjoyed it, and it's worth seeing.
Very well done. I agree. Okay.
And on that note, we want to thank you very much for tuning in. On behalf of Marissa Serafini in the booth, we got Demetri Panos here.
Hello.
John Comerford saying thanks very much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Bye, all.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye!